Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to another episode of Solar Powered Bodies, Voices of Wellness, where we explore the path to achieving holistic well-being and empowering lives. I'm your host, the triple board certified Dr. T. Mandel Denson L., and I am thrilled to have you with us today. Our show is dedicated to bringing you insightful conversations with experts, thought leaders, and inspiring individuals who are making a difference in the world of wellness. From mental health and physical fitness to spiritual growth and personal development, we cover it all to help you thrive in every aspect of your life. So get ready for another solar power conversation as we dive into coaching techniques and the transformative power of the work that we do. Sit back, relax, and let's get started on another exciting episode of Solar Powered Voices of Wellness. Today we have Brian McFarland, a 57-year-old business and fitness professional, mental fitness coach, and a pro musician who empowers individuals to thrive through growth and balance. As host of the Turnaround Artist podcast, launched 2 months ago and growing rapidly, Brian combines his passion for learning and service to inspire transformative wellness and creativity. Welcome, Brian. Come on in here to this show. How you doing?
Oh man, Dr. T. Mandel. If I was there, I'd try and give you a big hug. I am really, I'm really honored to be here, and what you're doing for the world is amazing, and you're just giving of yourself. And I met you 4 minutes ago, and I can feel it, and I'm just really humbled to be a part of it. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here. Listen, I gave him a brief synopsis of Brian McFarland, but nobody can do it like you. Can you tell us who is Brian McFarland?
Sure. I'm still trying to find who Brian McFarland is. I think that's a lifelong journey for me, at least. I always speak in the first person. So I'm 57, as you said, and I am a sales. I'm trying to encapsulate this, so I actually wrote myself a little bio, or my life partner did. She's the brains of the operation.
Okay.
I'm sales and client relations coach that has decades of experiencing, first off, closing multi-million dollar deals, nurturing major accounts, Fortune 100 companies across the board. I'm also, and this all plays in to what I do now. So I've been a lifelong professional musician, drummer primarily, bass player as well. And I know a lot about engaging and exciting audiences. And my fitness career is I went from being an avid cyclist when I was in my young teens to, I would say, a professional bodybuilder for a short while during college and thereafter. And then I translated that to while I was doing sales profession into picking up indoor cycling instruction, AKA spinning, where I did that for 23 years. All the while, we get into the dirt here, right? And let's be vulnerable. All the while, with all that is this glossy cover, if you will, battling my own inner demons, I'll say. And because I worked for 8 years at Rolling Stone, not just because of that, but it was a wonderful place to be, but it highly accelerated the non-positive use of my brain and my body. So it's kind of offsetting being healthy and just this dedication to wellness and health with
the dichotomy, right? The dichotomy, right?
100%. You found the words for me.
I feel your plight. I share your plight. Go ahead.
Exactly. So but fast forwarding. So I'm a father. I have two amazing children. I've been divorced once, and now have found a life partner who's been just the yin to my yang, as we say, for the last 2 years now. And this has been the biggest acceleration of my own personal growth, and has allowed me to move to what I feel like I'm going to live for at least 100. So I'm in the
Okay.
second half of my life
That's right.
at,
That's right.
at this point. So now it's my time to give back
Yeah.
to the world, to my clients, to my friends, to my family, make amends, and take a lifetime of wisdom of both doing it the wrong way and then knowing how to do it the right way, and landing in this, interestingly, in this podcasting world, which I did not expect,
That's right.
but that is helping so much with my own personal healing and my ability to help try and heal others, and landed me on this screen because Marisa, who's my life partner, and I started, as you kindly mentioned, a podcast called The Turnaround Artists. So the idea behind that, very quickly, and this provides the foundation for where we're going to go here, is I was divorced 10 years ago. She was divorced 2 plus years ago. And anyone who's been divorced knows you got to do a turnaround, obviously. So I worked on mine for a long time, arguably not really that successfully.
I
She
understand.
worked on hers, but when we came together, the whole of each of our pieces was greater than the sum of our parts. So that has allowed me, behind every great partner is another great partner, right? That has allowed me to now hyper accelerate my passion, my love, my drive, and thus my business, to help others, and now start working on making a living out of it, in this second phase of life, because I want nothing other than in the next few years to just be waking up in the morning, having a full schedule of things I'm going to do for my own wellness so I can be a foundational example for my clients,
That's great.
and then provide that love and that energy and that passion and that information to them, and then wind down appropriately back into my personal life and refill, right? It's like little kids. You do good things, you put them in a jar, and then you take them out of the
Yeah.
jar. So you got to keep the jar in balance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I like the example there, right? It was that's one of the roughest things for us to conquer. That's the greatest barrier in our profession, is your own self-care, right? Because it takes a lot to do what we do, right? It's not just get up there and talk. It's not just talk to somebody. It's not that. It's a lot of preparation. It's a lot of overcoming and recovery in the first place, right? I got to run a whole lot of marathons, right? Alone, I've got to run cross country to get here, right? And over hills and valleys and overseas and all that to get there. And then am I able to see, right? So I appreciate that. Um, when you say, I want to talk about, I was going to save this, but since we're here, um, I was listening to your podcast, right? I actually
Thank you.
went and was listening to it, and I saw a few episodes, and I was like, bingo, right? Bingo. And I shared that with one of my team members, and I said, bingo, he found simplicity, right? You don't have to overburden, overstress. How am I do this? How can I do that? I said that's where I started. We were actually, they weren't used the term podcast a long time ago. It was a live stream. We streamed, right? And then there was no Facebook Live and stuff. That's when Facebook Live started, right? And so we was able to use Facebook Live, and but we was using that in multiples at the same time. So it allowed for today to happen, right? So we advanced the television network on Roku and Amazon Fire TV and those kind of things, and radio. We was already radio. Now I'm saying that even that's too heavy, right? For what we're doing, it's a barrier to recovery for so many people, right? It's not a big barrier because we can advertise commercials and advertisement, and if you need help in the crisis and critical and suicide hotlines and things of that nature where to get resources, we can do that, but they have to be watching, right? So, but this allows us to reach so many people in real time and help so many people. So I appreciate what you do. And when you talk about cycling, so your podcast, tell me about this podcast again. We were talking about podcasts, and you said, I didn't know it was largely mental health, right? When I first started, right? And I was like, oh, okay, because you didn't kind of describe it that way, right? It was just like, I got a podcast and we help people this way. And then I listened to it and I was like, oh, this is mental health and wellness. This is behavioral health and wellness, right? And I was like, yes, this quite qualifies as a solar power conversation. And so tell me again why. I mean, how do you feel like that's effective for you in reaching your goals with the people?
Sure. No, and thank you for asking that. And when I was reviewing and listening to your work and watching your great work and what you do yesterday and today in preparation for our time, I was also taking a moment and saying how, as I stare out a beautiful New York City
Mhm.
light-filled day, right, which I have a huge window on purpose. And when I wake up in the morning, I open those windows. You more than anyone know the value of getting light upon you.
Yes.
I mean, we know the value of keeping your room dark and avoiding the light, but we also then know how we need to embrace that if we don't have light, right? It's like, why I've never been to Alaska, but there's massive
Yeah.
depression there during the dark
Yeah.
months.
Right.
Um, what I found, and it's sort of interesting that I would find with indoor cycling, not in the light per se, sometimes depending on the gyms that I would teach in, you have artificial light. So you
That's
don't
correct.
have light per se.
That's
But there were
correct.
some that had windows and whatnot, but more often than not, let's say they weren't there. But where I got it from is I was so into cycling since I've been a little kid, delivering newspapers in the morning. And I will say, and this is all to your listeners, I want to always say, while I may say some things that I hope don't sound egotistical or like I'm bragging, that's not the point. I'm trying to explain something. When I was a little kid, I was the only little kid who wanted to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, jump on my bike 365 days a year and deliver newspapers. Why? I needed to be out. I needed to be moving. I needed to be in the light and get doing something. And I made a few bucks. I was 12 years old. I'm making $50 a week. That's awesome.
Mhm.
I'm
Right.
collecting from people. I'm meeting people. I'm trying to sell to people who just get Sunday papers to buy all week. So
Yes.
that's where the sales career started. But it was the light of day that when I was riding around, this is where I initially thought about the solar power. And it took me till now, 57, 45 years later, and meeting you and knowing about this to go, that's what it was. It
Right.
was when I would ride around, I was like, I've got an edge on everybody. I'm the first one out. Everyone else is sleeping right now. I'm working, I'm exercising, I'm making money, I'm breathing fresh air. And when that sun, there's nothing I enjoy more than being on a bike outside and watching the sun come up. If you have that foundationally to start your day,
Solar power.
it's going to be a better day. It's
Yeah.
always going to be a better day. So
Yeah.
now it's not sunny every day.
That's correct.
Getting back into the fitness component. So being outside on the bike. Well, then later in my life, because I live in New York City and it's not exactly easy to just take your bike out and, to be honest, quite dangerous.
Yes.
I saw an opportunity because I took a cycling class indoors and
Quite dangerous.
really dangerous. If you go into Central Park, it's okay, but it's like I've had cabs target me. I used to ride motorcycles. I stopped that. As you get older, you realize, there's a reason cars have metal around them because it wants to keep you safe. But I realized that when I went indoors for a cycling class. The mental health aspect there that triggered for me was I have the dubious honor of, I think, in every relationship I've ever been, I've been the one who gets dumped. So there's being vulnerable, right? So it was just one of many who dumped me. And I'm walking around, and in one of the podcasts, I talk about this, the one about spinning. We call it Wheels of Fortune.
Okay.
And my college roommate, who was a big weightlifter, so I was a bodybuilder, he was a power lifter, and he just knew we were always exercising, but we were also partying a lot. So, but he knew me really well, and I called him. His name's Steve. Hugs out to Steve. I was like, "Oh, Steve, this one broke up with me." He's like, "I want to see you after work tonight." And the statement I made was, he said, "Look, man, you're either going to go to the bar or we're going to go to the gym.
That's right.
And you've spent plenty of time at the bar, and you've also spent plenty of time at the gym. And right now, I'm going to make this decision for you. We are going to the gym." And that night changed my life,
That's right.
because I went to that gym and I didn't even know what a spinning class was. I make the joke in my episode where that girl who had dumped me had told me she was going with her sister one night to a spinning class. And Dr. Cimendo, I literally thought they were standing on discs, like spinning around for their core.
Yeah.
No idea. So all of a sudden, I'm at the gym with Steve, and we see all these people cycling, and they're sweating, and there's a lot of beautiful women in there. And we're like,
Yeah.
okay, that's inviting, and good music and whatnot. So I tell us, we go in, I look,
Environmental wellness is what we call that.
environmental wellness, AKA. And I went instantly, as I stepped in the room, I went, 40 people, like-minded individuals. When the door closes became one of my favorite sayings when I started teaching 3 months later, after that very first class, just taking one. I would say, when the door closed to the spinning room, I would say to my class, whether it was one person or 50, or one time I taught, several times I taught 400 people, I'd say, look, the second you walked in this door, no matter what's going on in your life, the world, anything, nothing matters but what happens in this room. And you can grab off the energy of the people here. You can grab off the energy of yourself. You can grab off the energy of me. But in this room is just love and peace and a commitment to each other and yourselves, because you could have spent your time doing any other thing. It's just
That's
like
right.
anyone who's listening to our message right now. I
Right.
constantly am humbled by, I say, look, you as a listener have given us the most valuable resource in your life, your time. You will
That's right.
never get it back. So I owe it to you, to your listeners, to my cycling and students, to my people I coach and train, to my children, to my family, anyone I come interact with. How can I make sure they feel better about themselves after they've had an interaction with me?
That's good.
100% committed to that. It took me a long time. You said it best. I love your metaphor, right? Mountains, valleys, hills, lakes, oceans, shark infested waters, all of it. But I'm
Yes.
looking at you now, and I can just feel that reciprocal love
Yes. Yes.
of each other, of people, and just wanting to be a positive force in the world,
Force
right?
in the world, right? I often say, I've gotten to, it's been a long time that I've been focused on legacy, right? And in a greater sense, right? Than the most common ways. It's important to me to leave that mark, right? To be a game changer in life, in the lives of others, right? Long after we're gone, I need them to read my words or watch these episodes or you know what I mean? Go to those schools or those universities or whatever it is. So we come here for a reason. I was a light creature when I came. I'll be a light creature when I leave. right? And so my job here is to do what? Emanate light, right? Emanate light. That's my purpose. I'm most pleasured when I emanate light. I'm most fulfilled. I'm most satisfied. The people around me are most satisfied. You don't want me in darkness. You don't want me to turn off the lights, right? I'm in recovery from the dark. Okay, so I do everything I can to stay solar powered and nutritional, and I share that with my people because someone's pause. So that part is this.
There we go. Now you're back.
All right, great. You go. I was still talking. I thought you were gone.
No, 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 no.
Yes.
You froze for a
Okay.
second. You froze for a second.
So that was good.
The light stopped.
Yeah, it was too heavy. It was too radiant, right? So this is a solar power conversation, and I appreciate that you have shared yourself with us, and so now we can believe, we can trust, we can have confidence that you're like us, right? And we go further. And this is believing that I'm a preventive and regenerative specialist, right? And that's my focus and practice. Dual diagnosis, co-occurring disorder, and I need to sound as if I'm their brother, or their nephew, their cousin. I practice one of the highest medicines in the world, and I still have to sound like I'm your cousin, your brother, right? Or it's ineffective, right? What's the purpose of it, right? Um, how do you guide individuals? How do you guide individuals to create harmonious and harmonious balance between their physical, mental, and emotional well-being? You talked about going and having moments of dark, right? Um, how do you guide them through that darkness into a balance?
That's a great question. So I'm going to lead with you mentioned a really wonderful thing, and I have to give a shout out as I do in almost every episode. Speaking for myself, I am no genius. I am a lifelong learner who was fortunate enough and truly blessed enough to, in my whole life, from bodybuilding to sales to coaching to fitness to I have my girlfriend Marisa, whose name I will mention often because I think so much about her. She calls it, I have a team of professionals that help me get through each week. I have a therapist who I talk to online in South Africa every week now for 2.5 years. I have a psychiatrist who I spoke to this morning, where if I need any prescription medications, which we try and limit, I see him once a month. And then I now have a podcasting coach. Shout out to Rory Paquette, who is the reason I'm here today. And he actually launched an episode him and I did today on YouTube on his show called The Podcaster Nation. And I'm going to actually suggest that he interview you because he's created a podcast about podcasters. So he would love you. And now Rory, even though he's not a licensed therapist, uh, talking to him for 10 minutes is like the best therapy session, some of them I've ever had.
That's good.
So it's all those people in my past, and I want to give you one quote, and then I'll answer the question directly. But one anecdote was that a gentleman, his name is Michael Hess, and he owns a sales coaching business that's called Core Six Advisors. By the way, I don't get any money off this. I'm not trying to do that. And then he owns a daily email as well as a podcast called My Sales Day. And Michael changed my life. I worked for 8 years for him at Rolling Stone magazine. And it was in my 20s, and I was partying my butt off, and I was in the darkness, like really in the darkness. And I thought the light was making money. How much can I make? How much can I make? I want to buy a Ferrari, when I'm 30. When can I hit six figures? It's all I cared about. All I cared about. I was playing music and doing this and that, but it was just like money, 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 money. And one day Michael pulled me aside, and this gets into your question. And he said, you know what, Brian? And you always had a way that I have tried to emulate. of teaching you something in a very special way. The fact that this is now over 25 years later, after we had this conversation, I remember every split second of it, tells you what a great teacher he was. And I hope to be 1/10 of the teacher that he was to so many hundreds of people.
Mm.
And he saw that I was like off track. I was in the darkness. I wasn't in the light. And he said, you know what? He said, question for you. When when you're on your deathbed, sounds morbid, right? What do you what do you want people to think about you? Never been asked that in 28 years old. I'm like, I'm still thinking about when can I buy that Ferrari, right?
Right.
And I punted on the answer and I said, I don't know. And he said, well, ask me the same question. And it was obviously all this is what he wanted. And I said, okay, Michael, what when you're on your deathbed, what are you going to think about? And I flipped it. And he said, well, I'm glad you asked. He said, I'm not going to think about the money that I made or the cars that I drove or the houses that I lived in and none of it. Flashing through my eyes as I take my final breaths will be the faces of all the people that I helped be the best that they can be. That's it. And knowing that, and it's not necessarily the quantity, but the quality of those experiences that those people had with me is what will make me feel like I gave back to the great gift that we each have of being born on this planet. The famous social media guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, listened to his uh, lessons one day and he said, your chances of being born are like 5 trillion to 1, right? So somebody was complaining, and he goes, what are you complaining about? Anybody would change their place with you. People weren't even born yet. So be grateful for what you have and give back. So it's with that lesson, which is why, and I thank you for letting me spend the time on it. When you talk about how do I help people on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and nutritional and body way, it's taking all that and there were so many other great people who taught me and still teach me every single day. Sitting here with you, you're teaching me.
Mhm.
And I just take that all in and process it, see how it works for me, and then go out to the world. And before I say anything, that's what I feel is like the secret sauce is I
Mhm.
look, I learn, I listen, and then I get an idea, right? I'm not a doctor. I have probably this much schooling compared to you, but
Mhm.
instead of like doing the MRI is the visual, and
Mhm.
it's the ears of understanding what our patient, our client, whatnot, what is troubling them. Where's the foundational challenge here? Because you were talking before, and it was said, we have the suicide hotline and this and that. Those are like fire hoses, but the
Right.
fire was started burning a while ago. So we can, thank goodness, there's resources where we
Right.
can help someone put out the fire when they need be.
Right.
But you and I both know we got to get back to the core of
Right.
the issue because until we get there, the fire is just going to keep going on. And then maybe there's not going to be that lifeline one day, and then we're not
Right.
going to be able to help them.
That's correct.
So that's how I look at everybody, whether they're paying me or they're just a friend or it's just a person I meet on the soccer field. And I try with my children and try with everybody I can to just look, listen, learn, and only if they kind of want, right? Because they got to want to. I can't do
Mhm.
it. We can't do it for them. Um, Try and guide them to some form of spiritual awakening so that that saying, right? Let me help you help yourself
Mhm.
because somebody helped you become the
Mhm.
great person you are.
Mhm.
Someone helped me start to be growing into what I hope is a great person. And
I want to be a great person too. Ooh, put me on that list. I want to be a great person. Listen, what specific daily practices or routines do you recommend for fostering this balance?
um, Number one, waking up early. Number one, after a good night of sleep. It all starts there. Turning those lights on right away, not fluorescent, but getting the windows open, letting the sun in. If you can get out in your pajamas and take a 90-second walk around the block, just getting the ultraviolet rays in. Sometimes I wake up way earlier than the sun's come out, so it's dark. I do have one of those lamps that simulates the sunlight. I don't like to use that stuff. But then first thing I do if I wake up, and my life partner, usually almost every morning, is first thing I do is tell her how grateful for the fact that she's there with me. And then we spend some time, or anyone, and if you're not with someone, a lot of people are alone. I'm fortunate enough to have this partner. Is I have two cats, right? I tell them how grateful I am to have them.
Gratitude. We got gratitude, right?
And then I have a gratitude journal. And
Yeah.
it's that foundational element of, we all got stuff going on, right? There's a million things you could say. But when you just get grounded and go, I'm alive, I'm breathing, I woke up today, I've got another chance to live my life. All right, like, bring it on.
Let's get started from there. We'll take it from there, right? Okay, so you help your clients identify and break free from bad habits. Sometimes some of these bad habits are addictive, right? Sometimes they're a little beyond just suggestion, right? How do you help them go from pre-contemplation, contemplation to active engagement?
Very relevant topic for me. So I am, in 15 days, I'm celebrating 1 year of complete sobriety off all mind-altering
Congratulations.
substances. Thank you. So I feel very proud to share that, because I realize you've got a huge podcast and a huge audience. So you have to embrace that, right? Because I'm a better person sober, and I believe everyone would be their best selves if they can be sober, if they want to find it, or at least that's what I need. And I feel for most of my clients and or friends, yeah, some can function and do whatever they do, and that's fine. But I would not argue. I don't want to make any more argumentative, but if you tried sobriety, you'll probably find your best self. Uh, we weren't born to start slugging a whole bunch of beers back. Like,
Yeah.
so your question about waking up, temptation, contemplation, usage, right? So last night I was in my weekly Marijuana Anonymous meeting. Some of whether there's 2 people in there or is going to be 20 people in a special meeting we're having on Saturday. I've learned so much from these people
That's right.
about exactly what you just said, right? I saw a man walk in there who was so clearly in distress about our age. And I just shook his hand and he smiled. And I said, welcome. Introduce myself, Brian here. I'm so happy you're here. Wow. Took a seat, never saw him. People shuttled in. And then the stories you hear from people I've met there and people who were brand new. One gentleman saying, I've been smoking for X amount of time. I hate myself. I don't want to do this anymore. And we talk about the 3 M's in MA. It goes from magic to medicine to misery. It's not my saying. That's what comes out of the group. And in every single person's story you hear, any sort of substance, in my opinion, that's what happens. So the contemplation of, oh, I'm going to do this thing, whether it's food addiction or gambling or drugs or alcohol, whatnot, you wake up and you probably know that's not a wise thing to do. However, because you've perhaps carved neural pathways, I did, that say, this is what I want to do, just like picking up this pen, until you break that neural pathway, way I'd like to look at it is to answer your question exactly is, right, if you do this every day, you carve this neural pathway, you know all this stuff better than me. So it becomes easier.
I'm learning some things as well.
So I have no hair, but if your listener is just listening, but if you cut out the weeds of a path, it's easier to walk through the path. So if I take a sip of energy drink, that's something I'm addicted to still, every day, well, the path is open. So it's easier to go down the path. Well, if that's not a healthy use of that, whatever, you won't be able to make it more difficult until you stop walking down the path, until you let the weeds start to grow back, which almost seems counterintuitive, right? Because you're just like, well, we use the word weed, ironically, but you have to carve out what I'd had to done for
You
the
have to
last.
you have to consistency and consistently, tend to that garden as you path it, right?
Yep.
And then you are now tilled that soil, right? And you remove those weeds. You've made way with new nutrients, right? New crops can grow, right? Without the hazards of yesterday, right?
100%.
And
And
it's daily. It's not a fix. You have to wake up, like you said, with intention, right? Some years ago, 2011 or so, I remember being in a rehabilitation or a three-quarter house, and the model, it was a very, very matter of fact, it was called Share, self-help, addiction, and recovery. There's some traumas going on there, but I end up they had this conditioning model, 2 feet on the floor, 2 feet on the floor. So they wake you up at 5:30 in the morning, like you're in the military, right? To go get ready for class or go out to work or wherever you're going in the world. But 5:30 in the morning, and they would come in and hit it with a pot and pan. So we would want to fight, right? Fight. You don't open my door and hit me the pan, and we'll beat you up, and day to day in, 2 feet on the floor. They come back again, it's pots and pans. Sooner or later, they say 2 feet on the floor, you got 2 feet on the floor. When they say 2 feet on the floor, they mean 2 feet on the floor. No laying down, it's time to get up. That was some conditioning, right? And it was as annoying as that was, eventually I was up before 5:30. I was already doing what I needed to be gone and do. And so are people. But it was a decompression unit. I was there for decompression, right? And reentry. And what I end up doing is making it a part of my modality because it made sense. It made a difference. It made a difference, right? I brought that to my sons, 2 feet on the floor. It's time to get up, 2 feet on the floor. Dad, ain't no school today, 2 feet on the floor. Now we do other things. So it was conditioned that early bird gets the worm. You know what I'm saying, beating the sunrise, right? Having the sun for breakfast. Um, these kind of things. So and following and for mental wellness, you was talking about the daybreak on the bicycle. I shared that. That was a free press delivery from when I was 10, 11 years old. So I felt that, and it did exactly that. And you can tell when the air changes, right? When you're breathing in that crisp, brisk, moist air, and then it becomes irradiated, and then you in this solar powered air. That was the secret, and that's the secret now. Can you share some practical strategies for building resilience and maintaining focus during the time? You saying how you was like we would be like successful out all doors and still be in darkness, right? What's some practical strategies for building resilience to stick with it and with the focus, with the program?
sure, daily habits, just making out a schedule. I'm going to wake up at this time, like you said, Get those 2 feet on the floor. Love that. I'm going to use that with my
Yeah,
clients and
that's
friends, right?
right.
Then what are you going to do? Write in your gratitude journal. Follow I never was in the military, but there's a reason why militaries do this. It makes
That's
sense. Write in your gratitude journal. Meditate. If it's for a minute or if it's for 9 minutes, I listen to the Daily J on Calm every single morning. Get that in place. Have a healthy, nutritious breakfast, right? If you can get outside, take a walk around with that protein shake. Now, look what I've done. I'm 30 minutes into my day and it's positive, positive, positive. I fed my mind. I fed my body. I fed a book of spirituality. I've fed my girlfriend with compliments and gratitude. She's done the same for me. So by the time it's 7, 8 o'clock. I used to teach 6 o'clock classes in the morning. I don't anymore, but I still get up at 5:30. By the time I'm up at 7, I'm I'm 2 miles ahead of everyone
that's
that's waking out of bed,
that's
right? And
correct.
it's just like that commitment and dedication to oneself
That's
is
correct.
going to lift all tides because all of a sudden other people are like, wow, how did he get so far ahead?
That's correct.
I woke my ass up early
That's
and
right.
I had a regimen.
That's
That's how
correct.
I'm here. It's not magic. It's hard work. And it's the consistency of developing those positive habits as opposed to
Mm,
those negative habits. And when
mm,
I used to use something that I don't
mm,
use anymore, take that away, replace it with something else. I'd rather write my gratitude journal than
mm.
pick up something that's going to be bad for me. And once I did that for 90 days, it the temptation to use that and instead write in a gratitude journal, it just fell off the floor.
And so now you led me into another part, um, mental barriers, right? Um, when you engage with clients or family and friends, and they have what are the common mental barriers that you see they face coming to you, and how do you guide them? What does the resources say?
The number one thing, and it's even for myself, so I'm not going to say can, I'm forgetting the word. I'm clearly not a master of the English language.
Mhm.
Hypocritical. Getting over stuff and not blaming yourself. In certain situations I'm trying to deal with in my own personal life that I try and deal with my clients and friends is everybody holds on to the past. You and I both know 20 minutes ago, we were talking, that happened 20 minutes ago. We'll never be able to change it. You know what?
Mhm.
There's different ways I wished I would have answered your questions or something like that. I can't. It's in the past. If I dwell on it, I'm never going to be able to move forward. And I know that sounds so cliche and so easy, but I have to remind myself of it. And then I always have to remind my clients of it when they keep walking in with the same problem. I don't want to seem like I'm not compassionate to hearing that problem. But if they're sticking their feet in the ground on the same problem over and over and over each week, we're never going to get anywhere, right? They have to figure out, I have to figure out a way to let that go so they can move forward and not blame themselves time and time again because it already happened. The way you move forward is not forget about it, learn from it, and take those next steps and saying, that happened. Uh-huh. I apologized. I acknowledge it, but I need to move forward because I can't dwell on the past.
What we call it, are you identifying as like emotional cognitive dissonance? It's kind of like that. Okay, so they'll pretty much refuse the medicine, right? They don't want to take it. They almost want to indulge in that problem again and again. My grandmother used to say, "Well, if she didn't feel anything, she wouldn't feel nothing." Right? So they just after feeling something, and if they're not able to get a great feeling, they want to cause any feeling because a feeling beats no feeling at all, right? And that's a trauma in itself. That's a crisis all by itself, and they don't recognize it. And so these habits that you mentioned, like positive reinforcements and shedding light on each other in the morning and stuff, That was nice. I'm gonna use that one too, right? Because I kind of took a note. Um, because we wake up and your schedules are different, right? And that's something that, as busy professionals, you don't often take the time to compliment your mate, right? Your wife, your children, right? You get the dishes and don't make me beat you when I get home, or whatever the case might be. You're busy raising them and rearing them and guiding them and protecting them and paying the bills, or that you say, well, that's my love. I showed you my love. I paid the bills. I took care of everybody. I protected everything. But, and so we get into this responsibility and obligation of a thing and not into the gratitude of a thing. My beautiful family, look how well they're doing and how they're flourishing. And, they learned that really well. She learned how to cook biscuits, right? Everything, right? Is that a new dress? Is that a new gown you have on? These small things go a long way. So it was good to hear you say that, because I'm very guilty of not being able to express certain um, vulnerabilities, if you will, right? Yes, to that part, and I thank you for that. How has your experience as a pro musician shaped your perspective on discipline, creativity, and mental wellness?
Sure. Well, that's one of my favorite
I'm
things to
sorry,
talk about.
mental fitness. This is the word I keep wanting to get back to because your bio is mental fitness. Please first give us what mental fitness is while you answer that.
Sure. Well, I'm going to shout out because she deserves it. A resident in my building, her name is Lisa, Leisa, Aras. She is walking across this great nation of ours. She's in Texas right now
I
because
read that. I saw that on your podcast.
yeah, her husband, she's from Australia. And I have to give the shout out her because I would be remiss. Her husband took his own life when her children were very young. He had so many mental challenges, and they had just gotten to this country, so they weren't aware of how, and it's still very challenging, right, to access the mental health system and get resources, and they didn't have a lot of resources, so they didn't get to him in time. And sadly, there's a human now not on the planet because of that. So she's seen this so many years, and she kind of just got fed up with the fact that right now in our country, there's always going to be challenges, but we talk about mental health, but we don't talk about mental fitness, right? So we talk about the problem, but we don't talk about the solution. So as a fitness person, she changed the narrative, and that's what she's doing, of saying, okay, fine, we're depressed and we're this and we're that and we're taking opioids and all this other stuff, right? But what are we doing for the thing between our ears on a daily basis to raise the awareness of how we get ourselves fit? Because if we don't have our brain fit, you and I can't put 2 feet on the floor to get out of bed in the morning. So mental fitness to me is, I told you about all these physical things and what I did, whatever, but I finally later in life understood this organ inside our ears is the one that's the central core of everything that we do. So how do we exercise our brain? I think the statistic you know better. I think we use like 18% of our brain or something like that. So if you can even expand it to use a couple percentages more or dive in, and how are you going to do that? You're going to do that through meditation. You're going to do that through learning. You're going to do that through reading, not scrolling on your iPhone, seeing what your friend's Facebook page says, right? That's not going to help you.
And nutrition.
And nutrition, right? And feeding your body, drinking lots of water, getting lots of sleep. All these things contribute to that mental fitness, so that all the things you're doing. So I'll throw music into there, right? Music is a huge one to develop mental fitness. There's so many studies. You as the doctor know way better than me. I started, the only TV show I let my kids watch when they were little was Baby Einstein. Why? It's proven that classical music, when you play it for infants and toddlers, it literally makes them smarter because their music is math. So if you start introducing math and music to a developing brain, they are arguably or unarguably going to be a more mental fit person. I have seen with my kids, and they get all the credit for it. And then I got them playing piano early on in their life, 5 years old, figuring it out, getting the discipline. Even if we had a little chart up between my son and my daughter, you had to practice 5 minutes every day. And it would be a little race, you're figuring out the ways to do it, but getting them on that regimen, stimulating their brain, developing their ears, all was leading to mental fitness from the beginning. So they had an edge. I had an edge because my parents were so kind in introducing music to me at a very young age that I feel a lot of the things I'm able to do now is because I've been playing music since I've been 5 years old. And I've seen how it helped my children, and I see how it helps everyone else. And even my now life partner, who did not grow up playing music, she's tried to bring it into her life later, and it's also bringing her so much joy and mental fitness as well. So you can start it at any age, and that's one of the elements where I talk to my students and say, well, what's your favorite instrument? Oh, I've never played anything. Why don't you start playing the bass? Why would I do that? Well, I can name a million reasons, right? Like, just try. Oh, I can't play music. Yes, you can. Can you clap your hands together? You're a drummer. Just start something that's just going to stimulate your brain and make you think differently.
That's
So
right.
that's a wild answer to say mental fitness, how do I think of it? How can I prescribe unique
Yeah.
alternative medicine? And
Yeah.
that's how I try and bring music into people's lives.
I appreciate that. I 100% agree. You know what I'm saying? Totally, you nailed it. I would add that at one point I was a teenager. I was a young fella, maybe 13, 14, and I ran across some tribal drum circles, right? And that did it for me, right? So for the next 7, 8 years, maybe, I would find all the drum circles, no matter what the activity, ethnicities, I went to all the drum circles. And those were the most healing moments and most spiritual moments. And I never imagined. So it became a way of life until I started having children and busy and start working at the hospital in the emergency room and all that stuff. So but that was so medicinal inside and out. And I think that is unilaterally across the globe. Music has always been, the medicine to the soul, right? For the mind. How do you? I want to go back to your podcast, right? I want to just spin back right quick to your podcast, the Art Turnaround Artist podcast. When you say turnaround artist, what made you decide to be turnaround artist? What does that mean?
Well, I have to acknowledge that Marisa, my life partner, she's amazing at naming things. Just she's a writer, she's a comedian, she's brilliant. So she's able to take concepts and ideas and then all of a sudden think about them and then boom, this she'll name it. And then all of a sudden it sticks. So we had been talking about, as I mentioned, we were both divorced. We had both turned things around. And we were talking about, and she, in a very complimentary way, she's like, my God, your voice, very much like yours, it's
Mm-hmm.
natural for broadcasting. She was one of the things that really attracted her to me. Thank God, because
Okay.
it wasn't my looks. Um, that's for sure. And she said, we helped each other turn our lives around so much that, and we hear every day of people's turnaround stories. And we're all turnaround processes till the day we take our last breath, right? So we walk to the gym, I don't know, 5 out of every 7 days a week. And it's this wonderful 12-minute walk. And I should start recording what we talk about in each walk. And so 2 months ago, we were just like, we've been floating around this idea of this podcast of helping people and recording. And we started listening to Jay Shetty and, all this other stuff. And we're starting to learn whatever, like, why don't we start our own? Like, oh, okay. Well, what would it be about? Oh, well, it'd be about interviewing each other separately about our divorces, interviewing my friend, how he turned around Showtime Networks as a PR guy, interviewing my friend Lisa, who's turning her life around and turning around mental fitness. So all of a sudden that turnaround theme started to flow. And then on the way home one day, she just said, I got a name for the show. It's the Turnaround Artists, because the music portion had really kind of come from me. And she
Mhm.
said she's big into art history, and she's also into writing, obviously, in art and painting and whatnot. She said between music and writing and art and going to museums and drawing and making pottery and everything else you could, playing the drums and playing tribal drums, all that art goes into someone's turnaround, because they need all those, some kind of component of something else other than
Mhm.
them. It's like we talk about higher power, right? You
So,
don't have to be
so
religious.
the artists. So you're painting a turnaround picture.
You're
You're a
finding
turnaround artist.
right. You're finding what art are you passionate about that you can then bring in and help yourself turn things around.
Right.
So thus, all of a sudden
Yeah,
she
solar
commit.
power. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
It's solar
So,
power.
right, the sun,
Listen,
we go around the sun all the time.
what is in your daily regimen, what does a average diet look like?
Oh, sure. I
That's
have
from the
been,
Blitz. That's on the Blitz. That's the
that's from the
Blitz. I'm
Blitz. It
sorry.
was part of the
That's the
Blitz. I love the Blitz.
Blitz.
A lot of protein, because since my bodybuilding days, I still swear for me by the fact that 1 gram of protein per pound of your body weight, especially if you're exercising, is necessary to keep your muscles growing and sustaining. At least half a gallon to a gallon of water throughout the day. I do take lots of multivitamins. Um, Getting much more into eating colorful meals, salads, and
Colorful is
whatnot.
good. Colorful is very good.
Colorful is good. The more colors, I take pictures of what I eat, and send those pictures to my love so I can show her that I'm eating different things. And then she's had us be gluten free. I was vegan for a while, but I could not get enough protein into my system to
Mhm,
manage. So now I've went back to chicken and fish.
mhm,
And what I'll say would be the perfect diet, and I'll give a lightning blitz, is I went to Jamaica once by myself, and I was kayaking out in Montego Bay in the middle of the bay. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this young man popped. He was 21 years old, skinny as all heck, but ripped. And he pulls out, and he's just snorkeling, and he's got a little line, and he's got these little fish on it. I was like, "The hell are you doing? Like, you're gonna drown." He's like, "No, I've been out here all day." So he was so poor, he was fishing for his family, and here we are at this gluttonous resort, eating everything under the sun. So I got to be
right.
friends with him during the week, and he took me up to where he lived in the tin shacks, and you know what it probably is
Dodge your
like
code.
in
Correct. Yeah.
Jamaica. It's not good. And what he said to me, and I'm like looking at these abs, man, and I'm like, Jesus, how'd you get those abs? He goes, "If it's not from the earth or the ocean, I don't eat it." Wow. Wow. So I wish I could maintain that now and not eat processed garbage and all the other stuff that we all eat. But I remember that young man and I went, that's why he looked like that. He'll probably outlive me. And he has nothing. And he is just living off the land of the things that grow from the earth and the things that come out of the sea. So I look at everything and say, how could I be closer to that and not have to use a can opener and do this and that and eat the potato chips? The closer I can get to just eating things that come from the earth is the best way
That's
that I'm going
right.
to be most healthy.
That is solar powered, right? It was a beautiful way to end this solar powered session, right? Eating closest to the sun. If the sun and the earth didn't make it, don't take it, right? If that's the bottom line, I want to live as close to that as possible. Um, I do pretty good these days. I do pretty good these days and some discipline. But we got some things, right? I like some things, right? But overall, I make a very good example of it. I eat. I'm solar powered in the morning. I'm solar powered right now. I'm drinking all sunshine in this cup. right? It's all fruits, vegetables, herbs, mosses, branches, roots, berries, right? Skins, and us. It helps with everything, right? So this has been a solar power moment. Listen, Brian McFarland, I didn't expect this conversation to be as exciting and well as it was. You really, really are a voice of wellness. That is for sure. Um, and when I was provided your bio, I was like, what is he? He didn't say nothing about health, right? He's a rock and roll star. He made a lot of money. He could teach the people the money. I said, somebody forgot to. They didn't see the whole picture. I'm like, that led to something, right? Um, as it did for us as well. It led. I know my story, and it sounds culturally similar. I mean, different but the same, you know. And I was interested, and just 30 minutes before our show, you and I was like, I'm kind of excited to see what Brian got because he looked like he got something extra under the hood, right? So because we have some fitness coaches and you see them, they ripped up and they mountain climbing, jumping out of planes, and and everybody has amazing, amazing stories. And so yours was like, I represent this class, this state, this classroom, right? And you did represent that classroom well. I appreciate it, and it was a soulful conversation. Brian McFarland, Bliss. How can these people find your podcast and your social media?
Oh, thank you. Blitz. We are at theturnaroundartist.org. And if you're always looking for guests, so I'd actually love to have you as a guest. And you'll tell me a turnaround story, and that would be email us at hello@theturnaroundartist.org. Our podcast is up on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, YouTube channel at Brian McFarland. You can also catch my YouTube video this morning at Develop Podcast Nation. Up there.
That was significant. So you're serious. You're here to stay. You're here for the long run. Okay, awesome. I don't have all of those things, right? I have my websites and we got a ton of social media all over the place, but I was never the one who actually operated most of the social media. I'm pretty new to the social media myself. And they got great team members, you know what I mean? And I learn a lot from them. They teach me how to simplify things like this session, right? And I'm still the old camera crew and the lights. I got the drones. If you saw my TV shows, you see we got the drones in the air and 400 people and the stages and So my team members kind of showed me, hey, we can do this and be as effective or more effective doing this in this arena. And so I appreciate them for that. And man, I'll be talking to you soon. So I'd love to come on your show and share a turnaround artist story. And to my people, thank you for tuning in to another solar powered session between Brian McFarland and myself. I am Dr. T. Mandel Dentonil, and this has been Solar Powered Bodies, Voices of Wellness. Thank you, Brian. I'll see you soon. See you guys.